Hello, everyone. My name is Brad Groux, and I am founder and CEO of Digital Meld. Welcome to the latest episode of the Start Small, Think Big podcast.
And I'm Robert Groux, founder and CTO at Digital Meld.
I'm Lucas Erb, founder of AIExperts.com.
Yeah, so Lucas and I caught up last week, and when he reached out to me, talked about AIExperts.com, and I was like, that's something that's right in our wheelhouse, obviously. We scheduled 30 minutes to talk for over an hour. I think we were going to just get an understanding of if it was a good fit to be on the podcast, and if we saw things eye to eye and things aligned. And I think we pretty much found out like we agree on pretty much everything, at least when it comes to AI and adoption. And so thank you, Lucas, for coming on. And Lucas has a unique background as well, which I think is really great. So he's worked much like myself and for the big behemoths in the consulting space. I work for Microsoft and he's worked for Deloitte and those things. And then having that insights from seeing how other industry leaders, Fortune 500 companies are utilizing these tools and like scaling that down to, starting AIExperts.com and wanting to get in and help small businesses. I think, again, what we say, punch above their weight class.
Appreciate it. Lots of kind words. Yep. I mean, we have so much in common, especially the AI, but I think the important thing is the way that we can take it to market and the way that we can help businesses. And not everybody looks at that the same, right? It's a dramatically quickly changing landscape. And I'm hopeful that we can help people along the way and make sure that humans are prioritized in this quick changing, this tools focused, this disruption focused industry. We need to focus in on humans.
I'm really excited for this conversation. Looking at Lucas's background, like it's going to be a good conversation here because he's been in businesses. He's seen, from what it looks like, all types, whether it's big or small. So really looking forward to it.
Yep. And we're going to kind of just jump in the news like we usually do. I think there's only really one major news story that we're going to touch on this week. And I think it's just because it's we say all the time, human in the loop, right? And the reason for human in the loop is because AI and automation, while it can improve your lives now, it can actually wreak havoc too if it goes unchecked. And so for those that haven't heard, Replit, it's an automation platform, and you can build AI tools on there. You build tools and websites and pages and apps and all kinds of stuff using AI to help you do that. And it's one of the darlings of the industry. It's one of the early platforms out there. I think it's been around since 2016. But over the past week, someone went on, Jason Limpkin posted a tweet that basically Replit deleted their entire production database for the app that they were building. And not only did it delete their database, when prompted and asked what it did, it actually lied about it and tried to cover it up, which is really fascinating. So this quickly spread around the interweb, especially the geek forums and websites that we go to, and like Fast Company wrote an article, I think Forbes, all of those types of, and basically the CEO was like, hey, came out with a mea culpa, did the right thing and said, hey, we screwed up. But obviously this is just what we kind of always tell people is use these tools, but always have that human in the loop, especially. And then it just goes to show that Robert and I were talking to a security partner of ours earlier this week, and people just don't take security seriously, especially in the small business space. They don't take their security and their business continuity. Robert and I, Lucas, are based out of Houston, so we deal with hurricanes every year. And so business continuity and DR recovery and DR plans are really important here, but we don't think a lot of small businesses pay attention to that. And so this is just one of those stories that's like, hey, just take this as canary in the coal mine kind of situation. Like, hey, this is whenever you're rolling out these tools, you need to do your due diligence and make sure you're protecting your data and you're protecting your livelihood.
Yeah. My goodness. It's funny. This is actually completely aligned, just perfectly aligned. I'm not sure if you all saw the TV show Silicon Valley, but they had an episode of the show where one of the main characters was creating an AI agent to operate on their code base, and the exact same thing happened. The AI agent initially just did all of his code for him. He was thrilled about it. It was even chatting with his teammates because engineers famously don't like to talk to each other or have meetings. And so it was conducting the meetings with other teammates for him and writing code. And then one of the last things it did is just delete the entire code base and cause a week's worth of trouble for the company. Wild to see true events out of something that was just speculative fiction. Nothing short of 3-4 years ago. It was completely outside the realm of possibility. And here we are.
Yeah, it's hilarious. I remember watching that show. I mean, that must have been 2016, 2017 for me when I, ran through that show when I was in college. And if you haven't seen it, it's a great show. If you're a geeky, techie type of person, like you'll definitely love it. If you're not, you may not really see the humor in it, but I saw that as well. I think somebody had tweeted that out. One of my friends told me about that. It's kind of a similar situation. And it's a really bad timing because the CEO of Replit just went on a podcast tour. Like he was on like every major podcast this past week. So kind of funny that happened right around this time, right around this security event. I would call this a security, DR type of event. And so, yeah, I mean, businesses, you need to think about the unthinkable sometimes, and it's not fun. It doesn't generate revenue, and that's really why most small businesses don't pay attention to it. We see it every day. I've worked in the infrastructure space for small to medium-sized businesses up to large enterprise. The large enterprises that I worked with were healthcare, and obviously they take DR, disaster recovery, backups, and all that stuff very seriously, and they're thinking from A to Z. But the small business, it is tough, and we get that, but definitely don't just assume that, hey, Replit's always going to be here, or hey, AWS is always, it's always going to be up 99.999%, right? You need to have a backup plan. And again, it's not for everybody, right? Every business process, every business in general can deal with downtime, but just make sure you're having those discussions internally, because I think a lot of people, they don't even think about it.
Yeah, another point about this is as you use you adopt these tools, especially SaaS-based platforms. Remember, you don't control those, right? You don't control those. And a prime example is, I mentioned last week's episode that Amazon came out with their Kiro IDEs. It's just it's a cursor basically competitor. So it's a fork of Microsoft Visual Studio Code, and then it actually uses AI, and you can vibe code, as they say, or you can code. It actually does really well because there's vibe coding and there's like a planning aspect of it, so you can actually do it the right way, in a DevOps perspective. And I downloaded that to start using it, and it was a really great tool. Like for 2 or 3 days, I used it as my coding, my IDE for a couple of days, and then just in the middle of the night one night, as I'm really in the thick of it, I'm like 95% through of this little POC I'm working on, and it cuts me off and it says, you've reached your limit. Not that I can reach my limit and then I can pay to unlock for unlimited, or pay to, it uses Claude Sonnet 4.0, which is a high demand model and all these things. And then because it's in preview, they said, oh, sorry, we cut you off. And so you literally had to wait till the next day to start working again. And so just know that those types of things are going to happen when you're on this bleeding edge. But that's, again, why we like to do catered solutions and work with our clients and partners and things to build these solutions, because again, if you don't control it, if you're playing at someone's playground, and they can close that gate at any time.
That's a fantastic point about the platform risk. And I think it's also, you mentioned vibe coding there. It's maybe the first catastrophe on a major scale. Like, Replit is a well-known, trusted company in infrastructure and developing code for multiple startups that I know in the city here. I'm based in New York, and there's a lot of high caliber startups that are choosing the best platform for what they build. And I think this first catastrophe, it's maybe reflecting what's happening with vibe coding and this growing trend of, you mentioned a couple of different code agents, right? So now there's Claude Code, which people are allowing essentially to run on its own for sometimes 30 minutes, sometimes an hour. Sometimes people spin up 5 different coding agents side by side, give it the entire code base, and say, okay, now go and take this Jira backlog of tasks that I have for code and just go off, just go off to the races and write and solve problems. This is fantastic, right? It's magic that we're able to do this. But you mentioned in the beginning, human in the loop. You need to have real human tests. You need to have test cases that are clear. One of the recent Twitter posts I saw, the AI was commenting out test cases to pass them. So it's like, I know what I can do to pass this test case here. Just comment, skip this and hard code the answer. These sorts of things are going to continue to be problems, and we desperately need to now silo and separate the AI from different parts of the code base, right? Like a test part of the code base produced by humans, which no AI can touch or edit or change, right? That your entire code base runs through. You need to have a dev and a prod, and let the AI only test the dev section, right? The section that's not quite into public facing internet and published internet protocol, right? You need to have your code separated and segmented out and keep humans in between the AI and the end product. And I think it's absurd that such a successful company made this mistake. It's not going to be the first, and it won't be the last.
Yeah, I agree completely that, again, I say it all the time, we're building the train as it's going down the tracks with AI, right? And we're saying guardrails be damned, especially in the US. I think the EU has a more pragmatic approach, but maybe too overbearing. I think, again, you have to make the decisions that's best for your company and the risk that's best for your company. If you do your due diligence and if you follow best practices of, documenting your processes and procedures and having a disaster recovery plan in place, you don't really have to worry about these things. Yeah, if they were properly running, hey, it deleted our entire, production code base, a good IT team could recover that within an hour. So yeah, you have an hour of downtime, and then the upside is way better than that hour of downtime. But if you're not doing your due diligence, I haven't dug too deep in this in whether to know that company had done their due diligence, but if you do that due diligence, then it's a little bit less of a risk. But and if you're a small business, you're like, I don't have time to worry about these things. You should, if you If you're a window cleaning business, I have a nephew who owns a window cleaning business, and if he's not backing up his customer contacts, if he's not backing up his invoicing history, things, and his computer crashes or something goes down, then he's lost his entire business. He can probably remember and go through his Rolodex or his phone contacts and get back to those. But for the most part, it's, tabula rasa, clean slate. You got to start over. And this is a really successful business. It's a two-man show, but it's a really successful business. But so you can take those, do that little bit of due diligence and just make sure you're using tools and things to help back that up. And then talk to experts like Lucas or us and just, hey, what do I need to do? I have no idea even where to start to make sure I'm protecting my business. And then when you're rolling out these solutions, it's like, how can we do this in a thoughtful and a best practice? We I come from the Microsoft world where everything is quote unquote best practice. You're either best practice or you're not, so are you using their tools based upon what they recommend as their best practice? That's what you should always be striving for with your business. And that's where SOX compliance comes into play, right? The Enrons and MTI WorldComs and those things back in the day that caused all of those triggers. That's why those exist, is because those best practices exist for a reason. Yeah,
and I wasn't going to bring up the story, but I was reading it this morning. It directly applies. And Brad, I can send you the article. I haven't dug into it too much. It's a little, I have a lot of questions, but the title of the article is 158-year-old company forced to close after ransomware attack by a single guest password, 700 jobs lost. So, I need to dig into this story further, but again, there may be stories that aren't, this dramatic, right? But regardless, this can happen. Businesses have been closed down because of ransomware or things getting deleted, or AI, and AI is going to be coming at play now, right? Who knows what people are going to be able to do once you have all these AI agents in on the web out there doing stuff for you, right? And so it's already happening today. And so people can reverse engineer those agents, those LLMs, to have it do things that it's not supposed to do, get it out of its guardrails, as they say. So it's just further proof, if businesses, like Brad was saying, if you're not thinking about it, you need to, even if it's just high level thinking, it's worth doing.
Yeah, and we've had customers who have been affected by ransomware. We've had customers who've been affected by phishing attacks and invoice scams. $500,000 on an invoice scam. Luckily, the FBI was able to retrieve it. Those things happen, and that's okay. It happens. But the thing is having those plans in place to adapt whenever they do happen and to be able to recover when they do happen. There's ransomware insurance. There's cybersecurity insurance if you have a cybersecurity incident. And the policies aren't that expensive, especially it depends on the size of your company and those things. And so for a small business, those policies are, maybe a couple $100 a year. And then you're protected when those things happen. But that's a great story. And thanks for bringing that up, because again, a 158-year-old company and 700 jobs lost, all because, some greedy folks out of Eastern Europe or Russia or one of those bad actor states, attacked them because they were vulnerable. So again, we could get a little bit more positive, but just know that we're very much doom and gloom sometimes, but it's just not to scare you straight, right? Again, I tell folks all the time, we're the cardiologist who's telling you to stop eating Big Macs. That's why you hire folks like Lucas and Robert and I. And it's not, we're there to be your partner and make sure that you're doing everything you need to do. But we're also trying to train you for a marathon, right? Couch to 5K. And then from there, we're training for 6 months to a year to get you to where you need to be. Awesome. So I think we'll leave that with the news stories, because we've probably been doom and glooming you enough for the first 10 or 15 minutes of the episode. But a great conversations. Thank you so much, Lucas and Robert, for bringing those up and providing those insights. And so going off of, we're in our 20th episode now. So we've been doing this for 20 straight weeks, which in and of itself, can't believe time flies that quickly. But also during that entire time, we've been telling people to embrace these tools, to shut up and build. Any saying you want to say that we've probably said it over the last 20 episodes of how you can use these tools and change your life and things. And so for Lucas's context and for your listeners' context, whenever we started this company, Robert and I, we started this as a product company, because you can scale products a lot easier than you can scale people, right? But we quickly found out that there was a need also for consulting, especially when it comes to AI and automation, because businesses don't know what they don't know, right? And business leaders don't know what they don't know. And so we kind of fell into this gap of hey, I'm just going to be a consultant, because they've reached out. It was paying the bills. We were able to get benefits really, really early, those types of things. We were able to quit our jobs earlier than expected and all those kinds of things. But at the same time, we always knew that our passion is to build products. But not only that, we think we can help more people by building products. We still we've been building products since we started the company, but more catered solutions, what we call them. So we build products specific to the needs of that company. And we have frameworks we work with, construction and engineering, energy and oil and gas. So we have frameworks and we'd kind of know what they need, but for the most part, we would always need their input for exactly what they needed. And so we just decided to release our first product, and it's based upon feedback we've gotten from folks within the industry, but also because we think it's a great product that showcases the potential of AI. We kind of fell on this, I guess, 6 to 8 months ago. We were like, how can we show people the power of AI? And it took us long enough, but hey, idiots, use vision learning, use cameras. That's how people understand. They understand with their eyes. And so, because a lot of what happens with AI and automation happens in the background, right? It's automation that's just happening in the ones and zeros, and you don't really understand it from a business perspective. How can we show that off, though? And so what we've done is we built our first product. We're releasing it. This is a long window of saying that. And so digitalmeld.io is our business and consulting website. And we found up digitalmeld.ai. So let me go ahead and share my screen.
Yeah, and while he's pulling that up, like Brad was saying, the biggest thing that I always struggled with businesses was to really show the capabilities and the power. Like I can go show them some automated invoicing process, but for whatever reason, the end user, the business user, decision maker, they want to. It just needs to look better for them to get it right. It's a lot of it's about UI. And this is just coming to me after 6 to 8 months of doing this, and so this for us was like, hey, like Brad was saying, how do we show people how this works? How do we get their brains churning? Because that's the big thing. What I tell businesses is, look, I can build generic invoicing processes. I could build a generic chat bot for your business that can chat with your files, right? But the really cool and powerful stuff is going to come from your mind and your brain. So this tool here is hopefully going to get people's brain churning. So
what you're looking at right now is digitalmeld.ai on the screen. If you're listening, basically we've stood up a new website, and that's what we're kind of looking at, and it outlines our new product, which we've codenamed Rubicon. I know there's a lot of Rubicons out there, but codenamed Rubicon. I'm a big Greek mythology nerd and like history nerd and stuff like that. And so if you know the history of Greece and things like that, you may see that as we announce more of our products going forward, that the naming schemes and code names are kind of in that way. But basically, it's unlocking the potential of AI at the edge. So we work in the construction industry a lot. We work with the energy sector and oil and gas a lot. We work with a lot of businesses that have blue collar workers or field workers, people in the field. And in the field, they have, we work with Texas Department of Transportation, Harris County Toll Road Authority. Whenever they're doing construction on the side of the road, they have all kinds of sensors, right? They have the pneumatic tubes that ding, ding, ding when you're going on that counts the number of cars. You have cameras, traffic cameras. You have, construction cameras. You have site cameras. You have security. You have methane detection. All these. I could go on and on and on about the types of sensors that we've talked to folks about and what they would like to glean insights for. And they're collecting all of this data anyways, right? But they're mainly collecting it to be reactive. What if we could build a tool to be proactive with that? And then also to be a single pane of glass for managing those alerts and thresholds and all kinds of kind of stuff. And so that's what we did. We built Digital Meld .a, and then Rubicon is the name of our, what we're saying, AI Edge platform. Again, this is still very much we're figuring it out as we go. We're putting it out in the ether today and getting feedback from folks. We've had some great partners who have worked with us so far to give us from these industries to give us feedback. Steven, if you're listening, we appreciate the feedback you've given Robert so far, and like others we've sent it out to. So this is what we're showing today is our 1.0, right? It's like it's out there. We could put it out there and give it to a customer tomorrow. It can be in the SaaS, it could be in a black box, wherever you want it to be. But for the most part, what is safety and we're starting with safety because again, that's something people get. It can literally be any kind of sensor, but that's something that people get. So we thought, hey, let's start with safety. And so that includes like fire and smoke. So fire and smoke detection on a job site or a business. Methane detection is really big, especially in agriculture and industrial here in Houston and Texas overall, right? And then PPE, personal protective equipment. Are people wearing their hard hats and their vests and their gloves and all these other sorts of things? And then zone protection. So you have a no-go zone on a construction site, or someone shouldn't be somewhere on the factory floor. Can you monitor that and say, hey, that's a security incident or that's a safety incident? And then having worked with health and safety folks in the past, most of their processes are manual. So when there's a safety incident, someone fills out a spreadsheet or they fill out a form, and then it goes and you review it within 3 to 6 months. And has this been fixed? And so we created an incident management system that kind of works off of these. So with classification, location-based, resolution, status monitoring, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And then we also built in geographical monitoring. So people have multiple sites. We actually monitor the devices themselves, all kinds of great things. I could probably drone on and on and on, but we'll have the links in the show notes. Head to digitalmeld.ai and it goes you complete details of kind of what our platform is. And then we're going to run through the platform really quickly. Robert, do you have anything you want to say?
When we first got this idea, I'm thinking in my head, like people have been building tools like this this is one of the first use cases of AI, right? Like vision PPE, there's tons of training data. If you go out, you can see people talking about this 4 or 5 years ago. And there's been platforms out there from 4 or 5 years at least. And what I've figured out, and Lucas, I'm curious to hear your feedback on this thought process, is a lot of these tools that's being built are people out in Silicon Valley. They don't typically have a lot of industry experience. And so the end product doesn't relate to the actual business use case. So when they go and take this to an oil and gas company, guys that are used to having people in steel-toed boots, hard hats, safety glasses out in West Texas to demo this, like that's not what they're getting. And so it's not that the product doesn't work, it just doesn't match what the industry needs. And so I was like, all right, we can let's just build this and let's just get it out there to show people what's possible. Because again, as a technology person, as somebody that's looking at this every day, I may look at things like this, you're like, man, we don't need to worry about that. Like, there's tons of people doing this, but in reality, there's not. Like, there's not a lot of people doing this, and there's not a lot of businesses that understand what's even possible. So I'll pause there, and Lucas, I'm very curious on your feedback there. If you've seen that on your side, or you just mentioned you're working with a lot of startups in New York, or know a lot of people out there. Like, what do you think about that? Like what I was just saying.
Yeah, your wisdom is exactly right. I think you need the subject matter expertise to apply directly to a business's problems and understand it. And this landing page, at least, and I haven't seen the full demo yet, I'm excited to see it, is rife with industry expertise and understanding of what people are going through. And with someone like I'm in the city, right? There's not really job sites in the city. We might put up some barricades, and there's a little bit of construction that goes on the front or the inside of a building or something that I can see from the outside. But no one around here is wearing steel-toed boots and deeply understanding the problems that you are all facing and solving with this application. And so being able to go in and understand is everything. And AI, frankly, it's just this general intelligence that can be applied to problems. And you really need to have a deep understanding of the specific problem and the way that it's already solved by a human to even begin to develop AI to do it, right? Like I say this all the time with the people we work with, the clients we work with, it's you fundamentally are the expert, and you know your business, and you have your key problems and your use cases already that you're solving with human labor. All we do is we try to make AI match and assist you in a way which is accurate and consistent, doing what you already do best, right? And so if there's no best practice, if there's no SOP, standard operating procedure existing, you can't automate it. You can't do anything with AI, because what doesn't already have a process, you can't go ahead and then set up a code-based process to duplicate. There's nothing to duplicate. And so what you've done here is, you've studied well the problems, I'd say, of that industry, and that's going to be the key. And it'll probably take refinement too. I'm sure early customers will have lots of feedback.
That's great insights. And again, like we built this because of feedback from the customer. We talked to people, and again, if you're trying to figure out, hey, I know I have the guts and grit to like build something and see it to the end, go talk to industry experts. Go talk, if you're in New York, go talk to the finance experts. Go talk to the guys or head on New Jersey and talk to the guys at the ports. Like if you want to get into the blue collar side of things, like they're out there and they will talk to you. Robert was just at an industry event here in Houston where he talked to someone from the port of Houston. And they were like, and he showed that he'd pulled it up on his phone, and they were like, yeah, we could use something like that. And I see where you're coming from with that. But again, the needs of the port of Houston folks are going to be very different than the needs of Exxon or Shell or Chevron, the other oil and gas folks and energy folks here in Houston. But that doesn't mean there's not parallels. But again, we say it all the time. Even though we've built this platform, to us, it's still a catered solution. It's about 80% there because we're using your edge devices that you already own, that you already have out there, your cameras, your methane detection, your LiDAR or radar or thermal, all those sorts of things. You've already bought those devices, and we'll just plug into those. But until we start capturing that data, we don't really know what we've got until we see it. We know what we can do. And that's the beauty is, again, I think Robert touched on it brilliantly. It's hard to tell people what AI can do for them. And so our goal of building this platform for nothing else is to get people's minds turning like, oh, I can see how that would relate to my business. Because at the end of the day, vision learning is vision learning. And so basically anything your eyes can perceive or a camera can perceive, we can train a model to predict. Like that's whether it's reading license plates or counting the number of cars on a highway, or getting people to understand the possibility is that they're like there, you can't like do that. We can look at things from a drone. We can look at things from a camera that's mounted on the side of the road. But until people see that in practice, they kind of just think you're selling snake oil, right? And so one of the things was we've built this platform for that same sort of thing. And I think, Lucas, I would love to get your insights on that. Is like what do you see when you talk to business leaders, especially maybe in the mid-market small business leaders who don't have access to dozens of people on an IT team? How are they are they really still only focused on like the LLM part of it? Maybe they understand a little bit about predictive analytics, but what are you seeing some AI use cases that are actually gaining traction within that space?
Yeah. Oh man, such a good question. Most of the folks that I talk to are fundamentally they're knowledge workers, right? And so that's still a big chunk of the U.S. economy is knowledge work, is information based work, is people sitting at desks somewhere and pushing paper and emails around. And I think that's reflecting in sort of the market cap of some of these companies. The Chat GPTs and the Anthropics of the worlds, right? OpenAI and Anthropic are competing neck and neck to dominate this knowledge economy, information economy work. And the venture capital guys of this is like, okay, it could be a multi-trillion-dollar opportunity because everything, when you boil it down, everything is data. We all know as technologists, right, that even when you're talking about physical, when you're talking about atoms instead of bits and bytes, right, the atoms can all be distilled down to data. And you could look at this video footage and you can see, okay, for example, like I was just looking at a fantastic demo the other day. I was scrolling through the LinkedIn feed. Someone had created a perfect sort of like theft detection platform using AI. And so you imagine all your security cameras that are based in, say, like you have a little, gas station somewhere. You have a camera pointed at the stall where people can pick up chips or they can pick up any other item off the shelf. And this AI at literally no cost, right, to the user, because we're talking about data quickly being detected on an edge device somewhere. At no cost, it can see that somebody grabbed something off the shelf and put it directly into its pocket. Right. And the AI will outline that and it'll say, okay, like this is clearly high probability this person is stealing something. And then the person who's behind the counter could get a little ding or notification on their phone, for example, that alerts them, okay, there might be some theft going on in the store right now. That sort of thing is low hanging fruit for AI to assist and to help in the physical world. And I think those conversations are happening less because when people think about AI today, like the cultural momentum is behind these chat models, these LLMs. And so we need to talk about both. We need to talk about AI as a broad term for automating things that could be done by a human being and finding ways for intelligence to add value that didn't exist before, right? Where there are problems to be solved, clear problems to be solved, like stopping theft in a store. And you can do that using artificial intelligence. You don't have to have like a team of security guards that are watching every shelf.
Again, great insights. And for sure, I stopped at this point of the screen to kind of build upon what you were saying. The entire AI process, regardless of what you're doing, is you ingest data. So with an LLM, it's ingesting the data that you type in, it's into it, but it's also been ingesting data for years as it scrapes the internet and the models are trained. And then the AI is analyzing what you've provided in your chat, right? Your chat box that you've hit submit on, and then it's providing you an instant alert or an instant answer. That's the same process of literally every automation, not just AI. Again, this is all just automation too. So like if you get an email from your boss, trigger that, hey, send me a text message that my boss sent me an email. That same sort of if this, then that statement that's been around for decades, right? The business process automation and industrial automation type things. If a trigger happens, do something. This is the same sort of thing. So you ingest data, you analyze that data. Now you can analyze with AI. Before it was like people combing over the data and then using spreadsheets and formulas. And then whenever a certain threshold is met, send an actual alert. That's the same for business process as a business process. We say that all the time. And hopefully, as we build and showcase this model, it gets those wheels turning in people's heads that you can do this for your business process now, regardless of what it is. That same business process can be automated, at least partially. Again, we always believe the human in the loop is really, really important, but you should at least think, hey, if there's something that you do every day that you wish you could speed up and or automate, let's start there. Like you said, start with that lower hanging fruit. And that's what we kind of did here, I think, with these solutions, at least low hanging fruit for us.
Yep. And I think, this is a little bit tangential, but I do want to hit on how important LLMs are still. I think there's a bit of a cultural momentum right now behind, the hype bubble of people building ChatGPT wrappers, tools that are just simply ChatGPT under the hood, doing some specific task in some way, having a nice interface on top. And that's all that these startups are. And just for a second, just to kind of push back on the theory that these models have reached their full potential in the market, I think there's a lot of smart people in the world who have carefully considered from a research level, like a PhD level research analysis of what is happening in the market today with large language models, who who have considered the impact on knowledge work and on information work, again, which represents a massive portion of our economy here in the US. I think that there's a lot to be had just in these companies that are adopting better prompt engineering on their teams, right? For example, you might have given your employees ChatGPT subscriptions and said, okay, go ahead and start using this to craft emails and to develop new applications or something. If you're an engineer, you might have said, just start experimenting. And then you saw nothing happen, right? Maybe you saw a couple emails come through that were slightly better written, a couple of marketing drafts that came through that you thought, oh, for sure, this is built by a robot. And maybe your compliance team started evaluating a couple of key, compliance angles across the company to make sure that things are being done properly before they're sent out to the public using AI. A couple of just really easy use cases, right? But I think what people are missing is that there are companies, probably most of them in Silicon Valley, maybe some other parts of the world as well, that are fully now automating using advanced prompt engineering techniques, that are writing custom code from the bottom up using AI agents that can plug into their business a specific job function that was being done by a human monotonously and for many hours. Right? Like the average knowledge worker, I think that the stat was that they spend 38 hours per month on tasks that could be fully automated using AI today. And so if you just think about that then in aggregate across your company, if you have 300 or 1,000 employees, knowledge work is an important thing that we could actually, if you prompt a little bit better, if you think about the key use cases a little bit better, you might see so much productivity improvement. Say 20%, a recent study showed 20% productivity gains across a team that was focused in specifically just on that, on prompting better. And so I know it sounds like the easiest, simplest thing I'm suggesting here, but I promise there's gains to be had here.
Yeah, I tell people all the time too, a lot of those problems, there's no ROI in a business like us or a consultant or a software company to build it. So who's going to build it? It's going to be somebody internal, somebody that knows these tools, that understands how this stuff works. And I love what you're saying, because I keep hammering that on people. It's like, most of this cool stuff you want, you're not going to pay me $8,000 to build it for you when you could do this yourself if you just understood how all these tools are working together. So that's another big piece I see as well in the industry, where the wrapper model, the reason it works is just because, like, hey, it solves a problem, right? There is clearly a problem. Now, are these companies worth billions of dollars or millions of dollars? Like, who knows? Like, hey, it may be a good, the solopreneur business model, right? That a lot of people are doing, where if you haven't heard of that model, like, there's people out there now generating, a couple $100,000 MRR, with a basic SaaS product they've built off the back of ChatGPT, and it solves a generic problem. Like one I heard of the other day, like, ingest your bank statements and puts it in a spreadsheet. And it's like, seriously, this guy's making $10,000 a month from an application like that? But it's just, it solves a problem. And what people, don't understand is, like, you could actually go build that probably in a day, right? If you really understood the tools, and I say in a day where it just works for you, right? Like, I have a chat bot that I chat with my notes with. It's messy, it's clunky, it doesn't always work, but it works for me. And I could have went and paid, $200 a month for a tool that can do this for me, or I could have just built it myself. And that's what I did. And so the market is kind of tricky right now, because there's all these things out there, and it's like, what makes sense to build, what makes sense to buy. And I think from a business perspective, it's always going to make more ROI sense for most applications to be built internally. And so training is huge. Having people understand how these tools work is huge. So
I think there will be, Robert, your point is tremendous. There will be a growing trend of people reconsidering their subscription-based applications as well, where you might be spending thousands of dollars on. Now, I don't want to name specific names because, God forbid I mentioned Salesforce on the podcast and then Mark Benioff comes to attack me. No, what I think would be a good idea is for people to reconsider how much they're spending on software and how difficult it would be for their killer feature that they're using at their company to just be built from the bottom up by one or two software engineers that you already have employed, or by one or two consultants who really know what they're doing, coming in and rebuilding from the bottom up for that specific use case. Because if you own it, and if you know it's going to work for one specific small thing, you could do that maybe for 10 different applications and save your company $10,000, $20,000 per month. Depending on the size of the company and how much software licensing you have, it could be a dramatic savings that you find just by re-engineering your software.
People say all the time that AI is going to kill SaaS, that SaaS model, like you were saying. I think it will I think it'll weed out the wheat from the chaff when it comes to the SaaS models. I think there's always going to be SaaS platforms that are worth the investment, especially if a company utilizes most of it. But let's be honest, most of the companies who buy a SaaS product, they use maybe 10, 20, 30% of the features, mainly because they don't have the time to sit down and figure out how best to utilize that across their entire organization, or the decision to even use that SaaS model, that SaaS product that came from the top down without talking to what we call the boots on the ground. So we're like, yeah, that product doesn't really solve our problem. It helps a little bit, but it doesn't really solve our problem. And what we hope is the boots on the ground, they get access to these tools internally and or, on their lunch break or something, and said, I'm just going to go solve this problem for myself. And then once they solve that problem for themselves, they go to their teammate and they say, this is what I did. What could we do as a team? And then from the team, you build that internal groundswell. That's what I see happening. That's been happening for years with automation tools, shadow IT, if you want to call it that. But the goal is to just build that momentum internally within an organization, but mostly in your organization, give people access to these products, these LLMs that do help with this, because LLMs are super duper important. Robert and I would not be where we are today without LLMs. Whenever we started going down this path of how are we going to do this? The first thing I did was with the chat GPT is I'm trying to build this. What should I do? I guess now's a good time to show, but I'll show the platform itself. And again, this is a POC where in real life, it'd be real cameras connected and real devices and stuff. But for security and cost perspectives, this is just placeholder data in here. But for the most part, we will use our custom models to train for vision learning and stuff, but we will always inject open source and or paid LLM models to give us more insights, because if you don't, you're just leaving so much off the board. Hey, you can ask a model, hey, I'm looking for a red car that was in this video feed. What time did it come through? You can easily train a model on how to do that pretty quickly. And so there's just a lot of great things. And so Again, we built this product. We'll go through this really quickly because I want to give Lucas the time he deserves to talk about what he's working on as well. But I think it's great conversations that come to this. But we started with safety because everybody understands safety. Every company has safety protocols. That's why we started with safety. And one of the ones we started with was fire and smoke. So vision learning models, again, if you can go to RoboFull Universe, there's models out there that can do fire and smoke. So that's hey, we can do that really quickly too. But what we do is we fuse data from multiple sensors. That's what I think separates us. So if you understand Tesla versus Waymo, so Tesla has their taxis, right? They train their vision learning models on cameras and cameras only. And there's a lot of concerns about that. And I'll let you do your own research. Again, I don't want Elon coming after me, like Salesforce coming after Lucas. But I would prefer the Waymo model, which uses LiDAR, radar, thermal, and cameras and multiple other sensors to understand and train their models. So just know what we're looking at here is just cameras, but we've actually utilized LiDAR, radar, thermal, all the things I've talked about. And basically what we have on each page is just live camera feeds. And this would just be from a drone, could be from a camera feed in a vehicle, whatever. As long as we have a live feed to it, we can show you in real time that is actually happening. And then we're running the models either in the cloud or on edge devices at that site or local to wherever that's happening. And you can give you some insights. And so our goal for this from a safety perspective is maybe the cost savings for insurance pays for the platform itself. Right, whenever you've got a car alarm, or back in the day when you use the steering wheel locks and stuff, you would get a little bit off of your insurance for your car, right? And so maybe those are the types of things we think. But not only that, you have incidents are flagged and they're sortable, and then you can see and click on more information about those. And so when you click on one, you can actually see the clip from whenever that actually happens, and then you have the chat feature there to get insights based upon the specific things you're talking about. And that's nothing special. That's a off the shelf model that we've trained a little bit of context on top of to get us there. Methane detection is something that's really big, again, like we said, in agriculture here. And then so they have methane sensors in a lot of these plants. So why are we not just capturing that? But we can also detect methane via vision. Most folks don't know that. And so and then PPE, I think, is the big one that everybody really understands. Are they wearing their hard hat? Are they wearing their boots and gloves and things? And the funny thing is, I don't have the video in front of me, but maybe we'll share it in the show notes, is the first time we learned about PPE, there's a video of Robert literally walking down his driveway wearing a hard hat and a vest with his security camera in real time and says, can we capture this? And that was, I get 8 months ago, Robert, something like that. We're like, okay, we can do this. And so that's kind of where we started down this process. And so PPE was the thing that thinks the most sense to people. And then another, with talking to industry leaders, I would have never known this, but zone protection is really important. right? So there's no-go zones or dead man zones or whatever on a job site. It could be for security purposes, could be for safety purposes. And what could we do with that? And we can actually, in some of those, you see the skeleton kind of walking. You can see the skeleton walking. We can do that. We can train the models to do that. And one of the things I think is really cool is we have re-identification. So there's open source models out there that intellectuals and students and researchers have created where it can recognize, once you train on who someone is, every time it sees that person, it knows it's them via their height, their weight, their gait, not just facial recognition, but just the way they walk. And so basically you can keep track of Teddy's had 12 PPE violations over the last 6 months because he has, and it just knows that. And then the beauty is you have alerts across the system. And whenever you see the alert, you can actually acknowledge the alert or you can give it a false positive, right? Like we'll have it where it's false. So you're training it as it's going to, because we know it's not going to be 100% accurate, right? And so you can see these things in real time, and then just it provides basic metrics from a dashboard perspective. Again, we'll build out these views that are specific to what that company wants to see, but this is just a general type of thing, type 5 incidents kind of thing. And then overall, you have an incident view where you can click in and get more insights for that specific one and acknowledge and those sorts. We're looking at a single pane of glass for these edge devices. Your edge devices, and the edge devices are different for every people. And like people, what is an edge device? An edge device is any sensor or system or device that's out there in the real world that's not happening in a server, like a server farm or your computer room or on someone's desktop. And then we obviously geolocation. You can do things you can filter by location and incidents and monitor devices. Hey, our Starlink's down at this site. Can we get things back up and running? And so, that's the kind of overview of the platform. Again, I want to go kind of quickly because I think we owe Lucas some time as well. So, Lucas, love to get your feedback. Robert, if you
can I praise this super quick? This is fantastic because the AI is helping you do, I think, what's maybe the hardest thing in safety. And it's dawning on me, this demo is fantastic. It's a great demo. But in particular, I'm thinking about, so here in New York, I had the opportunity to work in the 30 Rockefeller building for a couple of years, looking out the window down at a skyscraper being built from the bottom up, right? And every day I would show up in the office, they would have built another layer of this 80-story skyscraper, putting in rebar, pouring concrete. The layer solidifies. Then the next day they build another layer on top of that and another on top of that. It's absurd to me that they're able to do this so quickly and with safety in mind. People forget that these iron workers, they used to die all the time, that it was like a dramatically dangerous job where all the time someone would just fall right off of a steel beam off of a skyscraper. And that would be the end of, literally it's like a family and friends business. That would be the end of their family or friend that had been working in ironworking for 20 years. And I think these protocols, these procedures, they were hard earned over years and years and years. And a culture sometimes can erase those. If you stop policing them, if you stop thinking about them, a culture at a popular airline company we all know of gradually led to the demise of some of the doors and the bolts and stuff on the plane, right? So if the culture allows for slack, then gradually things become less safe and you might just see a return to form where ironworking is the most dangerous job in the world. And I think so something like this, you're enforcing culture in a way which is non-obtrusive, which is really efficient and cheap, and you're helping people be safe.
Yeah, the big key to me is safety is typically in companies is reactive, like Brad was saying. This allows it to be proactive, and there's a lot of safety questions. Like I was at a government conference yesterday, and a lot of safety concerns. Well, like, hey, we don't want it to say, hey, John has 13 infractions. And it's like, well, hey, we can do that too. You don't have to identify anybody. We could blur out the faces where you don't even know who it is technically, right? So the all can be built in. It's just, again, have the conversation, and that's kind of the point where we were going with before. It's like, just have the conversation with people. Everybody's use case is going to be a little different, but I think safety is always huge. All the companies I've ever worked for in the blue collar industry, luckily, have been very, very safety centric, and that's kind of why it made sense to me, because I was the IT guy. Like, hey, Robert, here was an incident at this time. Like, can you go find it? We don't really know when it was, and so I'm sitting here scrolling through 6 hours of footage trying to find whatever it was. Now you can just chat with an LLM, and it can at least trim that down. Maybe instead of taking me 2 hours to find it, it'll take me 30 minutes or 20 minutes, right? So tons of use cases, but yeah, I'm excited about it, and I appreciate the feedback, Lucas. It's really good, and your context on the buildings, because that's insane, the steel workers out there and what they had to go through. I never really thought of it from that perspective.
Yeah, like you said, the safety is written in blood. I mean, it really is. Unfortunately, it's always been reactive. Like, okay, so now we need to have people do harnesses because people kept falling. Those sorts, like, this is hopefully save some of those incidents. But again, we started with safety because everybody understands safety. But there's a lot of things. If you have if you have anything that someone needs eyes on, or a camera needs eyes on, and someone's monitoring, we can automate the vast majority of that. We just need your help to train a model to do that if there's not a model out there. But also the training data that you have, there's no reason that we can't build a platform for you to capture all your data. Like, let's say you have unique sensors unique to your industry, and train a model off of all of that data, and then license that model back out to the masses too. Because that data, yeah, you're like, well, maybe that's my competitive advantage. If that's your competitive advantage, it's fine. But is that another revenue stream for you? It could be. You're capturing that data. Again, Amazon's, Microsoft's, Google's, because they're data, not because of their everything else. Everything they build is just a method for them to capture more data about you and your business. And so just know that your power is in your data, and there's no reason that you can't license that too. And we're happy to help you with that. And that's one of the things I think we're going to build into the platform based upon some feedback from us, because businesses are struggling. They are looking for more revenue streams. Hey, if you train a model to do something really cool, and there's someone across the globe would like to use it too, what does that hurt you? They're not your direct competitor. So just some things to keep about.
The CIOs that are listening, Brad, their eyes are just, they've got the cartoon hearts over their eyes that are popping out of the head right now, thinking about ways to build revenue off of their business model. Because I think historically, it's like technology has been looked at as the cost center of the business, but it doesn't have to be that way. There's a lot of value to be earned.
In the blue collar industry specifically, there is so much money left on the table because of that mindset of it is a cost center. And I've tried my entire career to change that mindset. It's tough, it's like guiding a ship, and it starts at the top, and you have to have a leader that's very technical minded and centric, whether he's, knows everything or not. He just has an open mind. And I'll say the folks that I have worked with have been, better than most, but yeah, there's a ton of money left on the table because of that thinking.
Awesome. Yeah. And so Lucas, again, thanks for joining us. We've been dominating all the conversation here, but thank you for providing your insights and stuff. So now I'd like to pivot to you have a unique background, having done consulting for Deloitte and worked with the CTO there and with the executives there to kind of focus in on even the bigger ideas and bigger projects for folks. And I believe, you started AIexperts.com as a joy of taking all that knowledge and insights that you learned from these global scale companies and like helping that small business and mid-market companies kind of unlock their potential. Can you just give us a couple minutes on your background and why you think, reflect on the pain points you've noticed at the enterprise level and how those show up in small businesses too?
Yeah, thank you. Really appreciate the intro again. And I'll give the shortest one on myself. So my career, I spent the past 10 years specifically in software engineering and big data, and the most recent 5 consulting to those Fortune 100s you mentioned, Fortune 500s as well, specifically helping like CIOs, CTOs figure out what their strategic bets are going to be on emerging technology, especially AI. Right. And my background being information, AI has always had a soft spot, but I'll totally confess here to the whole podcast. I'm an AI guy, pure and proper. I'm bullish on it. I spend every day learning and thinking about it, writing software with AI. However, when I started in computer science, AI was just this PhD research activity, which was largely untouchable to any institution, which wasn't a Microsoft, a Google, an Amazon, that wasn't a research lab at Stanford. Right? You had a very narrow subset of the population of the world that could leverage these technologies because it required a big data center somewhere and a whole bunch of complex math to make it happen. And what we've seen now in the recent 5 years is a dramatic democratization of the power of these tools, which are, as you've pointed out, Brad, and as you pointed out, Robert, they're almost ubiquitous in their application to industry. That you could solve safety problems, you can solve theft problems, you can solve problems of finding, for example, traffic cameras and reporting incidents. You can solve problems of disinformation on the internet, right? Just a completely out of left field example that has nothing to do with the physical world. AI now is almost ubiquitously available and at a cost which is approachable for a small to medium business. And I think that though that trend is beginning to be realized by executives of small and mid-sized businesses, I don't think anyone has fully grasped how big this is. That information now is as democratized as like post-industrial oil, right? That if you think about like how OPEC at any moment, if they wanted to, could flood the market with oil and the price drops to negative, like we're seeing the same thing now with information. At any moment, if OpenAI wanted to, they could just drop the price to zero on their data centers and information becomes so abundantly accessible that we just spike through the roof electricity usage and we spike through the roof business applications of this information. We are seeing a complete disruption. And so I got really excited there for a second, but I'll just share AI experts. Our goal is just to help medium-sized businesses, small businesses use this. And so I think the goal, right? A lot of people think about replacing jobs, replacing careers. My goal personally is we have like a tsunami wave of potential coming our way. And my goal is to teach people how to swim and how to surf. And I think making businesses more efficient, that's always going to be the trend. But especially now, human in the loop, finding ways to make humans more efficient with this technology. And we say that now creativity is at the speed of imagination, which means everyone can be more creative. Everyone can be more imaginative with what they might achieve using AI and the latest tools. And so that's what we're doing. It's really simple. It's deep in my heart at this point, ways that we can help people with this technology.
Yeah, and I think you make a good point. And we like to say that, Fortune 500s move slowly because they have to, right? And small businesses and medium-sized businesses, they don't have to, especially if you're not publicly traded. You don't have all the other hurdles, the government hurdles and Sarbanes-Oxley and those things that you have to worry about. But that doesn't mean you don't take some of those principles that we were talking about, security and governance and business continuity and those things into place too. Because if you care about your business, and hopefully you do, especially as a small business owner, because you probably eat, sleep, and breathe it, then you need to make sure you're protecting it as well. And I think one of the ways you protect that is utilize these tools. Why? Because your competitors are going to utilize them whether you are or not. And that's going to be a differentiator. And the secret sauce of your organization is how your organization does things. And if you're not capturing all the data you gather from that, and again, even if you're in a blue collar kind of job, I was talking, Robert and I have a family friend who's a really successful plumber, but they're on the bleeding edge when it comes to technology because his wife kind of handles all of that side of things on like Google AdWords, and just gaining those business insights have helped level them above all the other plumbers in that area. They've always done great plumbing, but they've used these tools to help grow their footprint where they actually have turn work away and or have to raise their price because that's how they get the number of customers down.
Yeah. Wow. Tremendous point.
Yeah. Lucas, from what you're seeing, your industry experience, like what pitfalls and what mistakes are these small to medium sized businesses doing? Like, are you seeing just the chat GPT, hey, they've got a subscription and they're using that daily? Are they thinking bigger than that? I'm always curious to hear from industry experts, like what you're seeing out in the market, especially on that small to medium size space.
Well, it's not lost on me that your audience, Robert and Brad, is really farther along than probably the vast majority. Right? They're listening to this podcast, understanding your insights deeply. And so rather than just giving the generic prompt engineering advice, like I think we can go a step deeper here and talk about some of the ways that it's impacting broader things, right? And so I really think for me personally, the next step for business beyond just getting ChatGPT working across your workforce, right? 200, 500 people across the company could be leveraging those tools. But I think it's now about finding those SOPs, those standard operating procedures, those knowledge workflows at your company that might be automated. And this takes a careful touch. It takes both someone who understands the technology, like us in this chat, but it also takes someone who deeply, deeply understands the business and what they're going through. And so it's a bit of a boardroom conversation. As ironic as that sounds, AI has elevated from being something just the CIO and CTO need to solve for to being something that the entire leadership team needs to solve for. And I think we need to have a chat about what are the workflows right now, the use cases right now that are eating up hours and hours of our time, or what are the places right now that we're constrained in our ability to output and match competitors. And so I'll share a super specific example because the things I'm saying are high level, almost like strategy nonsense. For those of you who are impact oriented and want to go do something this weekend, here's a use case I'll share. Recently was chatting with somebody who their whole thing is submitting proposals for project work. And we're talking like thousands of these. We're talking proposals left, right, and center. Their team had all of this work potential lined up, proposals that would be a fit, but maybe just slightly outside the bounds of optimal fit for their company that they were submitting, again, manually every single time. And so the ones that couldn't quite fit into the work week wouldn't be submitted at all. And so we're talking about potential new revenue for the company, right? Potential real money, real hard dollars that were being turned away because the capacity of the company couldn't fit it. Now, you could say, let's just hire some more people to submit proposals. But those people might cost you $100,000, $200,000, depending on the actual total cost of comp for a human. And some of these proposals maybe aren't even worth that. Maybe they're smaller proposals that are less optimal. And so in this case, what does it look like to take an agent that's trained on your specific proposal language, on templates that you actually use as a company. And now you go after those edge cases of proposals that you wouldn't have targeted before. And you just start submitting those left, right, and center into the market. And where you can, right, you directly record a customer call, a listening session to understand what they're going through and pain points. And then you submit that information using an agent directly into the proposal to match their needs. And so you can craft really compelling agent generated responses to things that actually then go and drive real revenue for your business. And so, as is the case with this story, right, the person saw a huge uptick in revenue as a direct correlation of just going after these things that they weren't going after before. AI completely enabled it.
Yeah, it's great insights. And so anyone who's listened to our podcast before realize that we work construction engineering firms, and RFPs are one of the areas we've actually helped people automate, because again, and it's also one of the things we work for too, because we've chased government work, Robert and myself, and then they make it difficult on purpose. Let's be honest, or the larger companies can do it and the smaller companies can't, obfuscation, as they say. And so RFPs is one of the areas that is ripe for that. And so thank you for bringing on that real world use case, because we completely agree. And that you could, that's one of the tools. And that's, to be honest, that's what I initially pitched to all the startup programs when I started the company, was an RFP tool from a government perspective. So it's go scraping the websites and bringing all this stuff together. And it's something that we've started building, but like, it's just, we've seen more need in other places. And again, if nothing else, is you're building that contextual model for, this is how we as a company respond to RFPs. And this is our standard operating procedures, like SOPs, like you said. If you don't document those processes, you have that start there. Because once you feed that process into an LLM, it gives you way more insights and way more context. And you give it some of your previous, provided some of your previous RFPs that you've won, not just the ones you've won though, but also the ones you've lost. And hopefully over time, you're collecting data. You can see where the correlation between why you're losing some and why you're winning some.
Yeah, that's the perfect use case, because one, it touches the ROI. It's pretty easy to explain why this is worth doing, but it's also like, it was something they weren't even doing before. So it's, why not give this a shot? Let's see if this will work, and that's like the perfect use case. And that's the use cases Brad and I always try to look for with these businesses, because then it just makes sense. It's just like, guys, this is an easy decision. Let's see what happens, So that's an awesome use case. I think the proposal writing, that's the RFP stuff is a nightmare. It's a disaster. And I went to that government conference, and I was talking to a guy from the city of Houston, and he's kind of streamlining that and hopefully making it a lot easier for the smaller guys. And that's what a lot of people don't realize. Like, there's a lot of small businesses out there, your neighbor, your friend at the gym, like they run these small businesses, and they fight tooth and nail for every dollar. And the government work for them is huge, but they don't have they can't get their foot in the door. And so what are they left doing? They're left subbing under subcontracting other larger companies that are kind of just gobbling all this stuff up. And so it really helps the smaller guys, the smaller companies, like Brad likes to say, punch up and compete with these huge companies. And that's this whole AI thing, like that, to me, that's what I see in the future. I see a future of very, very lean businesses, not these huge 30,000, there'll still be companies like that, right? But I think like where I want to be is I want to work for a small, lean team and build really cool stuff and do really cool things. And I think that's going to be the future for a lot of businesses and a lot of industries.
Yeah. And I think the customers, right, of each of these businesses listening right now, of our businesses here in this call, customers will begin to demand that we're more efficient, that we find ways to take a small enough team, big enough for the task, but small enough to be lethal, right? That can go and solve a whole bunch of their problems for them in an efficient and cost-effective way. That's like all there is. Let's be honest, right? Like businesses either reduce costs or they make people money, right? And they find efficiency. And that's kind of how you build a business. I just think, look, I'm early as an entrepreneur, but I think there's not going to be room for legacy sluggish businesses to exist in a world where AI comes along and automates the vast majority of what they claimed to be a moat.
The beauty of these tools is it's going to be $billion boutiques, right? You're going to be small teams, maybe under 50 employees. They're making $1 billion a year because you have really smart people who are freed up to be more nimble than these big behemoth ships that take forever to turn around, right? And it's going to happen. I'm sure there probably have some companies that are already approaching that. I think Cursor, whenever it started as an example, was less than 50 people, and their valuation was up over $1 billion. And so, and to be honest, Cursor's not a unique idea. They took an open source IDE out of Microsoft Visual Studio Code and they built an LLM wrapper on top of it.
That's right.
But they were the first to do it really, really well, right? And once that just shows that you can do that too. There's no reason you can't build an LLM wrapper using all the context and knowledge you have for your industry and become an industry behemoth. Construction companies, you can compete with Jacobs. Construction engineering companies, the $18 billion behemoth that rules the construction and engineering space. There's no reason you can't. You have all the same access to those tools. Procore is one of the tools that I've seen companies with 5 people using, 1,000 people using. You have access to those tools, and I think Procore's smart because they do the value-based pricing, right? You don't actually pay until you win a project. I think that's a smart business model, and that's something that others in the SaaS space would never even think about doing. I think again, it's like only charge them whenever they're actually making money, and it's very much easy to get your foot in the door. And but you have, again, if you're in the construction space, you have access to Procore just like Jacobs and all these other behemoths. You have access to the same AI tools too, and so in the same automation tools. And just talk to someone, AI experts or us at Digital Meld. And I know Lucas is probably like us; he's very open. Reach out to him LinkedIn. We'll have his link on the show notes.
That's
and
right.
Then our newsletter and things coming out. And I'm sure he'll just love to have a conversation with you, because I think I mention it all the time, but I think we're creating a cult of AI. Jokingly, that's our goal, because the more people that know about it and they know about the potential, like that just helps us all. That helps the world. I'm a space geek. Like, go forth, reach for the stars. Like, that's the more people that adopt AI, the more capital there is to invest in the big dreams, the pipe dreams, as they say.
Yeah. And adopt it safely, right? Talking to folks like Brad and Robert and myself who have seen a couple of things in the space. Look, nobody has been in this space for all that long, right? So anyone who tells you that they've been an LLM prompt engineering expert and on their resume it says 10 years, they're lying because it didn't exist 5 years ago. But I think, let's be honest, you do need someone who's seen a couple of these things before that can help you dodge some of the obvious security vulnerabilities, that can help you, for example, which ChatGPT license is going to train on my data versus which one is going to actually shut off the walled garden of the data, versus what can I do to fully isolate my large language model so it exists within my own cloud and not on some other company's cloud that they're controlling. Right? There's all these other options that you can think about for safety, security, for best practice, for optimal efficiency and productivity that you will just miss if you just run in willy-nilly and start experimenting. You might as well just talk to somebody first.
Yeah. And to echo what Brad was saying, before with these small, lean billion-dollar companies, I mean, they're signing contracts for these engineers, like $200 million over 3 years or something. It looks like a football contract,
right?
It's like, it's insane. And so that just shows you, and that doesn't show business owners like how valuable people see this. Like, I don't know what else, like you're having scientists, very smart people getting paid football sport size contracts. Like, if you would have told me that 2 years ago, I'd be like, you're insane. Like, that's has that ever happened? Right? Like, never. Like, it's nuts. So to me, it's like, holy cow. Like, this just tells me, I mean, it's got to tell people, like, look at what this is going to be. And that's the value that those people are bringing. And what are they bringing? They're bringing this knowledge to build cool tools and AI tools, right? For businesses like us and for consumers to use. So start using it if you're not.
To me, it tells me more about the urgency, right? They see the immediate need and how important it is to get out in front of your competitors and how important it is to start small, think big, like start now. And so, Lucas, opening the floor to you, can you just take us through the process, what your normal process is when a customer or potential customer reaches out to you for the first time? What's the 5 or 10 steps you take to delivering a solution to them that helps elevate their business?
It's a great question. Yeah, I'm sure it's very similar for your business as well. But our process is first just a discovery call, just getting to know what you're going through and what your current adoption is, right? Everyone's at a different place. Let's be honest. Like, you might have been the person that when ChatGPT first hit the market, you were writing a poem and you were amazed that Shakespeare was coming out of some random chatbot somewhere on the internet. Or you might be the person that, frankly, you picked up ChatGPT just a month ago because you heard it has a really cool voice feature and you're speaking into your phone and your business was fully adopted, maybe, or your business isn't adopted at all. I think we need to start right at the basics and talk about ways that the lowest hanging fruit can be adopted by your business to actually have revenue tomorrow. Like, let's just get in there and let's get in there quick and do the things we know work in every single other business first. And then we can move on to the complex stuff, because everybody wants to talk about, well, I have this really exciting idea for an agent that could do this, that could do blank, right? One that I've heard recently is like, oh, our recruiting team is just drowning in resumes for seasonal hires. It's a big deal, right? There's a lot of resumes to review. Sometimes you're reviewing or staffing a whole bunch of people for a couple of months for a project or a construction gig, and then you need to roll off some of those contractors. Doing a job like that takes a long time, and agents can help automate. But again, let's start with first principles first, right? What is your priority here? Is it just to churn through resumes? Is it to hire the very best people? Is it to find solutions to the core problem? And do agents actually need to be used, and are they actually being used in the right place? I just think we need to have all those conversations. And so I'll be quick. The basic process we follow is discovery, learning about the business. Then we hopefully go into a sort of a readiness or a needs assessment. Let's talk together for a couple of sessions about the core needs of the business, the core workflows that you're already adopting, and how we can improve them. Then it's probably training and onboarding folks with a new set of tools, because there's a lot of readily available, things that you can buy that are off the shelf and that are cheap, that you don't need to go and build something custom. And then a sort of a last case scenario, which is for a lot of people, which is the dream scenario and yields the most revenue and productivity. Then we go and we build the custom thing, which does a very specific task that only your business has, which contributes to your competitive moat, which helps you take on the big dogs in the market. But all that takes a little bit more time, I think, to build to. Our framework is experiment, explain, and then evaluate. And so experiment is really the first step. Most people just need to start experimenting so they can see what's possible and build up the courage that AI is capable of solving a specific problem. And then explain is you really need to have a way to visualize and understand what's going on with this AI, right? And so you can't just operate AI in a black box somewhere and say, all right, Fred from accounting is now using AI. He's AI enabled, and never learn what's going on with it. No, you need to clearly explain what's going on every step of the way, so that this knowledge becomes like a sort of a circular learning system in your company where everyone is building their resource and their tools. And then the evaluate step, well, this is a little more complex, but for us nerds here, Rob and Brad, right? Evals are everything. And so if we're talking about optimizing for the best AI, you need to evaluate the outputs, and you need to find ways to bake into every ChatGPT model you're using, every Claude instance of project that you have running at your company, every custom agent. You need to bake in the best practices in the prompting and the best practices in the outputs, so that it's standard operating procedures at the company. And so evals are a key thing that people should be considering as well.
Yeah, I don't know about you, Robert, but that sounds a whole heck of a lot like what we do as well. I think we basically follow the same process and procedures. Again, when I was a consultant at Microsoft for 5+ years, it's the same. Deloitte, KPMG, McKinsey and Company, they all kind of follow that same process, right? Every understanding and delivery, and I again, hopefully folks understand what he's saying is, again, what the reason that we named the podcast Start Small, Think Big, right? The goal is to start with the basics, get an understanding of these tools and the possibilities of these tools. Because again, we know these industries a little bit, but we're not experts. We haven't lived in these industries for 20+ years. Like, once you get your hands on these tools, you're going to think about new use cases that we would have never thought about ever. It's just not possible because we don't have the industry experience. And then once you get that momentum and that groundswell, and you see the possibilities, then come together as a team to like reach for the stars, for those dream big things, and those things. Robert, do you have any insights from that?
Yeah, for me, it's I always tell people, like, it's kind of like a strategic thing too. You want to do something that's going to wow whoever's above you or whoever the decision maker is, right? And that's what Lucas can help with. That's what Brad and I can help with, right? But also, like, if you're doing this yourself, which I tell everybody, like, don't hire me. Like, if you can do this, let's do it, and just be thinking about the strategic mindset of, like, hey, if I build this, how does this, translate to the next level of this org chart to get this done? Because really what you're building is you're starting really small, and maybe you have a grand plan of something like much, much bigger, but you can't start with a grand plan, right? Like this PPE stuff we were working on, like, that's the end goal, but it's like, we want to have conversations. We want to make sure it's good. We want to show people like bits and pieces of that product, and like, hey, is it clicking with people? Oh, it's clicking. Okay. Hey, here's something we put together. What do you think now? So it's kind of like take it piece by piece, and then have an end goal. Like, try to think a couple steps ahead when you're doing these. And I think a lot of people right now, you said, Lucas, like the black box, like just giving them an LLM, ChatGPT or Copilot or whatever, and now they're AI enabled. And it's like, you see every Fortune 500 talking about everybody's AI enabled, but they're not seeing any improvements. And it's because we all know, as technical people, like, they're not AI enabled. They've just been assigned a license, and so now they're technically, they have AI and they can technically use it, right? So I think that's another problem with the market as well, is because of that, now there's some skepticism, and so it's it's doing a disservice, I think, for the market as a whole, because it's preventing people like us or people, champions in companies from building these really cool tools, because rightfully so, a lot of executives are very skeptical of some of these AI tool sets and the productivity, right? I've heard a few executives say, well, like, hey, my employees are probably watching YouTube with or without AI, so what do I care, right? Like I've heard an executive told me that, and it's like, I've never actually really thought about it that way. But that's the mindset, though. It tells you the mindset of some of the thought processes of these folks. So yeah, it's good stuff. I think the process that you have is very aligned and is really, really good, and very, very similar to what kind of we do, and I think what most should do, to be honest.
Yeah, hopefully, what people are hearing is that we're aligning at sort of a long, hard-earned wisdom in the industry about how to help people with this stuff. This is just IT consulting with a new brand, right? The AI is the latest thing that we're helping businesses adopt, but the IT consulting truths have been there in cloud. They've been there in data centers before it. They've been there in the adoption of networks and internet, right? And when we're talking about the best practices and the procedures that we follow, it's all well intentioned. It's not intention to just like make as much quick money as we can and then run away from a business. It's intention to build a lasting 1 year, 2 year, 5 year, 10-year relationship with a business where we see real change happen over time, and technology will continue to change, right? This is not the end of AI. And this is not the end of whatever comes after it. This AGI and this ASI, the super intelligence we're going to be seeing, there's going to be a continued, I think, need for this improvement and change. And these processes that Rob, Brad, and I are all following, it's par for the course.
Yeah, and again, I think we're in the continuous learning mode, folks. Like, we're learning more every day. I think Lucas and Robert would agree that we find out I read something new every single day that I'm like, holy crap, why wasn't I thinking about that? And can you do this? I will say yes, because this saw what we showcased with Rubicon. That literally started with Robert and I back in, it was late November, early December, downloading an open source YOLO model on, and then Robert connecting it to his camera on his driveway. And like, here we are, however many months later, with some feedback from industry insiders who's like, hey, I think you could, if you go this way, I think you have a product. And we just built it. And there's no reason you can't do that internally within your company. Like, you have a sensor within your company, or you talk to someone, like, you just have a need within your company, and it starts that groundswell. And shut up and build, I think, is what we try to say all the time. And it took us 18 months, but like, we actually started to shut up and building. We were building for other people, but it was like, maybe we should also do that 80-20 rule, where 80% of your time, is spent on your day-to-day job, and 20% is thinking for the future, whether it's upskilling yourself or building something cool, or bettering yourself, or something. The technology companies follow that 80-20 model for a reason, because it's super successful, I think. And again, we say start small, think big, but for the most part, I think just get started is the biggest thing to do. And so, Lucas, I could go on for hours. Unfortunately, I think we have to start wrapping up things here, but we like to do something with just a rapid fire towards the end. Just throw a couple of quick questions at you, and hopefully Robert and I shut up and don't drone on in responses, because we tend to do that. So, but what's one tool you can't live without, and that you've come to not be able to live without recently?
Can I give two, or is that cheating?
No, go for it. It happens all the time.
Okay, I'll give two. I'll give the easiest, lowest hanging fruit one, right? That this is impacting everybody. And so at this point, if you're not adopting this in your Microsoft suite, or if you're not adopting this on your personal applications front, if you're like a solo operator or something, you absolutely need to. And it's just a really good transcriber for your meetings that then you can turn into action. And so I use a tool called Granola. People use all sorts of different tools for this, but essentially what it does is every meeting I hop into, even FaceTime or Zoom calls, of course, let people know, but it transcribes the meeting. And then I can go ahead, if I have a follow-up to make, it'll use AI immediately to summarize the meeting, to pull out action items and next steps. And then I can say, hey, craft me an email to this person, thanking them for their time and following up. And it'll just do that right there in the chat window on the side, right? This sort of like AI enabled everything you do. It should be a core part of your workflow now, right? You're just wasting time if you're sitting there after the meeting and jotting down physical notes and trying to remember what someone said and then crafting a personalized email out of that. You might as well just use the AI to summarize and then write your personal email. And so I think that's step one for me. And then the deeper or the longer dive I'll share as a technologist, someone who loves the latest and the cutting edge. There's this new concept in AI, sort of enabled for agents and actual action, called MCP, Model Context Protocol. And this is the most exciting thing for me right now. What it is it's a protocol just like HTTP was on the internet, right? That allows for or enables your AI chatbot. For me, it's Claude. For some, it's ChatGPT. For others, it's a completely custom application that allows your chatbot to access your tools. So if you're a user of Notion, if you're a user of Jira, if you're a user of Salesforce, if you're a user of files on your personal desktop of your computer, it allows you to then quickly plug into those with your chatbot. I'll share there's security considerations to be had here and conversations to be had about this, but it's a very powerful tool that for me as a power user means I can chat with my one chat agent a bit like it's Jarvis and have it go off and do multiple different things for me and pull different contexts of data and then actually go out and take action on that data all from one chat window. It's an entire revolution of the way that we interact with computers.
Yeah, we've mentioned MCP in the past, and the agent-to-agent protocol, I think it was another one, a standard. But yeah, it is a standard way of building your own agentic AIs and having it's a way to connect to the APIs and or those systems themselves. Those are both great. And we use Microsoft Copilot because we're Microsoft 365 for the meeting transcription, but that was worth the price of admission alone, just the fact that I didn't have to take meeting notes anymore. And then even as an example, we used our meeting last week. I recorded it and we were kind of planning this out. And then I went to my ChatGPT, gave it the transcript from my Microsoft Copilot and said, hey, I need an agenda for our podcast. And that just kind of spit that sort of thing out. And it's something I would have done manually and it'd taken me a couple hours. It takes me 5 minutes, right? Just you're freeing up your time to do the things that are actually meaningful and driving things. So that's great. Those are great tools to do from that perspective. And I could keep talking, but what's the most overhyped trend in AI right now that you believe?
Man, so many probably to choose from. Overhype is, I think, an easy thing to do, especially for me as someone who loves technology. Like I'm probably a part of the problem in overhype sometimes. Right now, I would say probably the most overhyped though has to be these new technologies that allow people to build websites using AI. And they build custom apps using AI. This vibe coding trend is a real trend. It's a powerful thing that AI is now able to write code, but there is so much complexity to real software engineering still, to building a secure system, to collecting payments in a secure way, to using things like API keys to access data from other sources to make sure none of that leaks out to the general public. I think we need to really carefully consider whether the tools that currently have trillion, like massive market caps that they're targeting, we need to consider whether they're ready to target such a big opportunity and whether we should actually go back to the basics and seal down the software engineering and the safety first before we call this the next big thing in developing apps and developing websites.
Yeah, we talked about that. Replit, same sort of thing. That's vibe coding. Could have been vibe coding in those and like there's been lots of times where the vibe coding it's not for production. Vibe coding is for POCs and MVPs, internal use, not for production ready, not for something you want to put out there. It will help you for sure. But I think vibe coding is the trend that you need to know the basics of object-oriented programming. You need to know the basics of security and compliance and governance for sure. I think those are all great things.
Yeah, the thing with vibe coding that Brad and I always talk about, like for us, it's perfect for people like us who understand all of those moving pieces, but never really had the time or just never got focused on the actual coding, the actual process of writing the code, right? Like we could write code, but we're not going to sit down and write out a full application, in a day, right? It's going to take weeks and months. And what this does is it opens up Pandora's box where it's like, shoot, man, now we can, all those ideas we had 5 years ago, like those are all reachable now, right? Whereas before they were reachable, but it was like, take months. And now what's taking months takes weeks or days, right? And so I agree though, it's definitely not like what the market's kind of throwing out there. Like if you go on LinkedIn, the layman will think like they can go out there. It's somebody, and I say layman, I'm saying somebody that has no technical experience, who's never built anything, doesn't even know what programming is. They have the mindset that they can just go out and build an app, right? And you're starting to see this on social media with, the influencers and all that. And it's like, guys, it's really not that simple. It's simple for maybe people like us because this is just how we've always thought. But for people that aren't technically minded, like it's not that easy. So I agree. And that's a great call out for sure. I'll do two more questions. One that's just more kind of laid back. What's your favorite AI generated thing? So like art, music, or code, or like I saw, just to give an idea, like the Yeti, viral posts that were going around on TikTok and Instagram, like the Yeti videos, that was one that I was like, oh, that's pretty cool. And like people took advantage of that. But like, what's one that's really piqued your interest or was cool?
When wielded by, like, as you mentioned, expert hands, I still think vibe coding is the coolest thing. And so there is real value in building the MVPs. And I think maybe my favorite thing that was made, this guy, Peter Levels, who's an internet celebrity that creates all kinds of cool applications on the internet, used it to create a video game, which was a 3-dimensional web-based game that allows you to fly a little airplane. And because he has a following already, a cult-like following on Twitter, he was able to quickly get a whole bunch of users playing this game together synchronously, where you have multiple planes flying around in space. And they were able to also sell ads in this game. And he was making at one point $15,000 like every month off of this little web app that he coded with Vibe, right? With AI. Didn't write a single line personally of code that made this possible. I just think it speaks to what's possible and the potential of, our new paradigm in software engineering. But again, still early, and it just so happens that this guy had tons of experience in web development, software engineering before leading up to this project.
Yeah, I follow him. It's a good follow. He's he just goes to show it's like you can get started now. That shut up and build mantra. I think it somewhat started with guys like him. Like, let's just start building this stuff. And I think I saw that use case. Funny enough, I think like somebody figured out how to like not hack into it, but make changes or something. And they were able to change some things. And it was kind of like a funny joke. It wasn't like anything crazy, right? But it goes back to what you're saying before. Even the people that know this stuff, like it's not perfect. And I think he wasn't saying like, hey, this is a enterprise production ready app. He was very out there like, hey, I just vibe coded this and put this together like really, really quick. And so but generated revenue, right? It was a cool little game. So yeah, the last question I have, how do you explain AI to someone who's skeptical about it? Like, how do you help them understand it and see it for the future?
Yeah, that's a good question. I would say AI is the only emerging technology. Correct me if I'm wrong. I haven't heard anyone correct me on this, but I would love to be proven wrong. AI is the only technology in human history which allows us to have it teach us how to use itself. So you can actually ask the AI, how do I blank? And it will help you through the process of learning. That's tremendous. I mean, it's unheard of that we're able to do something like that. And so if you're a skeptic, I would say just grab whatever model is nearest to you. Maybe you have an uncle, a cousin, a friend who already has ChatGPT on their phone. Press the little button that allows you to talk to it and ask it to answer some specific question you have about some realm in the world that you deeply understand. All right. If you're a football player, ask it a question about the favorite player that you have and what it knows about that player. If you're somebody who loves to create art, okay, ask it to create an image for you of a painting that you know and love. And just see what happens. I think AI has an ability to prove skeptics wrong pretty quickly.
That's awesome. Good. That's really good stuff.
Yeah, I agree. And I 100% agree that it's the first tool that we've ever come across that will teach us how to use it. Obviously, like YouTube is how you can go search on YouTube how to use the internet and it'll tell you. But that came along many, many years later, right? I think that's the cool thing is people don't understand that we're training AI with AI. And again, all those ramifications from from an ethical perspective and security perspective, we're seeing that happen in real time too, because what probably happened with Replit is they were training their model with AI. And then what it learned was like, hey, you can lie about this, or hey, you can remove these code tests. Hey, you can do, you have to build those guardrails. And whenever it's production ready, large scale projects, yes. Do you need those guardrails in an internal project used between yourself and or your team? Maybe not necessarily. Or at least you do, but just a scaled back level of that. But just shut up and build. Start small, think big is what we like to say. And thanks again to Lucas for joining us. What we'll have is all the links that he's talked about and all the services that he's talked about, the links to our news stories and the links to Rubicon and Digital Meld.ai, they will all be in the show notes and our newsletter. So the episodes come out on Friday and the newsletter comes out on LinkedIn on Mondays with all of the details. And it's like a blog write-up and it's really worthwhile. I think we'll probably have 20 sources links on this one. And so it's worthwhile to check that out. And to get access to all that, just go to linktree.com/digitalmeld. And the newsletters are right at the top of that link. And you can get access to all of this. And again, we just thank Lucas for everything he's brought to this conversation, for the feedback, and being our guinea pig as the first person that not inside of our inner circle that we've actually shared the product with. So thank you for the feedback, and we'll keep you up to date on how that's going. And really, we'll just take 2 or 3 minutes to open the floor to yourself, Lucas, on how folks can get in contact with you and anything you'd like to say.
Thank you. Yeah, it's been a really fun chat. So thank you, Brad and Robert, and congratulations on the launch, right? It's a big deal. I'm sure there's going to be customers lined up around the block to chat with you about that. So good luck on all the meetings. And, as for me, I would love to chat with anyone who finds curiosity in the things we talked about. And it's okay if you don't know where to start. It's okay if you know exactly what you want to build. We can talk about both, but I would love to chat. And so you could find us at aiexperts.com. It's just the way it sounds. And you can find me on LinkedIn. I'm posting there pretty frequently as well.
Yeah, and again, we'll provide all the links to Lucas and AI Experts in the show notes and also in the newsletter on Monday. If you're in the New York City area, that's where Lucas is. I'm sure he'd love to talk to you. If you have a startup, I know that's one area that we're getting involved with is non-technical founders. Hey, what would you do? I would love having conversations with people and saying, hey, I know you can't hire us, you're bootstrapped, but let's have a conversation and say, if I were you in your shoes, this is the path I would go, or these are the technologies I would look at first. And I'm sure Lucas would love to do that as well. I don't want to speak for you, Lucas, but I guess I just did.
You've got it.
Yeah. Again,
let's take the call together. We'll make it another pod.
Yeah. Perfect. Yeah, that'd be great. We're always looking to help folks with their user journey. If you'd like to be on the podcast like Lucas has, reach out to us. Again, linktree.com/digitalmeld. And then also reach out to Lucas on LinkedIn. Thank you again for joining us. Robert, do you have anything parting words?
No, it was a great conversation. Again, it's just good to talk with like-minded people and just kind of see, what they're seeing, because it's different perspectives is great. So I love this conversation. I appreciate you coming on.
And it's okay not knowing. If you don't know what you don't know. Exactly. And that's what we're here for, and we're figuring it out as we go too. And we're not faking it till we make it, but it's pretty darn close.
There's so much truth in that statement.
Yep.
Thanks, guys.
Yeah, faith in your ability to figure things out, folks. And so again, thanks Lucas, thanks Robert, thanks you for joining us, guys. And I hope you take a look at our new product and offerings we have, and then hope you check out aiexperts.com. And until then, we'll talk to you next week. Bye-bye. We want to hear about your AI and automation journey, and we'd love for you to get involved with Start Small, Think Big. If you'd like to participate or offer feedback, please reach out to us anytime via email at contact@digitalmeld.io or use the contact form on our website, digitalmeld.io/contact. Also, please help spread the word by liking, subscribing, and sharing our podcasts on your podcast platform of choice. Thanks.